I don't actually like to hear myself talk for a long time. Okay, so any communication you like to throw in thoughts, questions, if you hear something like pertain exactly to you and you want to throw that idea out there, go for it. But, so, I mean, obviously we're about fitness here, right? So fitness, health, wellness, that whole thing, right? But there's something that feeds into that we can't really take control of those things until we have certain changes in our mindset that affect those things, right? It's really easy to say, okay, I'm going to just start eating healthy and working out, right? But there's more that feeds into that than just working out and eating healthy, right? And it's a journey in and of itself, and it's something that requires a change in mindset, discipline, how you think, how you act, how you are. You can't continue to be that if you're going to shift and do something completely different for you, right? So I kind of fell on this thought of discipline and trying to help you guys understand what discipline is in terms of how I view it, all right? And others may think differently how they view discipline and things like that, and that's fine. I don't think there's one set way in most things. I think most things in life operate on a spectrum. It's not black and white, all right? So even if, there are different views, this is kind of how I view it. I want to share with you. So discipline, it's got actually about 4 or 5 definitions, but the definition that I'm talking about specifically is to train or develop by instruction, especially in self-control. All right? So basically learning self-control and how to instruct yourself on how to do that. Okay? Why do we struggle with discipline? Right? And that can be a hard one to answer, but I think there's a lot of pieces and parts to it. The number one thing I think that affects discipline is a lack of structure in your current environment. Okay? Lack of structure meaning you don't have any structure or plan to what you want to do or accomplish. Therefore, a lack of plan gives you a lack of action because you don't know where to start or what to do. Right? I want to eat better and I want to start working out. And then you're like, I go into a gym and I don't know how to do any of the movements, and then I don't even know what the heck to buy at a grocery store because I don't know what to cook. Right? So you lack the plan. You had a good idea, right? But you lack the plan. And that lack of a plan discourages you, and therefore it's going to hurt you when you're trying to build a good discipline. All right? Your environment is just what you consistently surround yourself with. All right? If you're constantly in an environment where bad choices are going to be made, your environment's affecting you. Okay? It's more likely you're going to be making those same bad choices. Okay? If you're in a household where everyone eats chips and drinks soda all the time, you have a much higher likelihood of eating chips and drinking soda all the time than if you're in a household of, well, we really want to drink water or like tea or lemonade or something like that here. Okay? Just the environment you surround yourself in, you will generally adapt to that environment. So the next one is the task seems unattainable, and that kind of filters right back to that lack of structure. So the task seems like you can't even achieve it anyway. You're like, well, I don't even know where to start, so I probably can't achieve it. It's probably not for me. That person who achieved it, it probably came naturally to them, right? Or they just ended up in a good situation for it, so they're good, but that doesn't pertain to me because I'm just kind of going to be able to take it, right? So that's something that can really affect our discipline because we feel like we're not even set up to get the job done anyway, right? Another big one is we fear failure, right? We view failure as something that can be perceived to lessen our value to either ourselves or others, right? How many of you have had a thought in your head of something you want to accomplish, but you've never said it out loud to someone else? Right? Probably everyone in here at some point has had some thought of something they wanted to accomplish, but they were too afraid to say it out loud. Because if you went about and didn't accomplish it, then the person you said it to might perceive you as less valuable. right? And that's a hard thing to swallow because you don't want to be viewed as less valuable. Not saying that would be the case. Not saying that other person would even care. They might not even care. But you can build up this perception of, I don't want to feel less valuable, so if I just keep on doing what I'm doing, then at least I'll just be that. I'll never be less than that. Right? Whereas if I accomplish it, I might be even greater than that than what I am currently, but as long as I can stay at least right here, then I'm good. I won't be viewed as less. Right? So that fear of failure drives that. And that can be a real discipline and motivational killer. Alright? And then lastly, we are just simply confident in our routine. And that kind of goes with what I just talked about of just trying to stay where we're at. Because we're really confident in that. We're really confident with what we do. We're really confident with that comfortable routine we're in. Where it's like, I know what's coming each day, and this is good. Like, I'm really comfortable. I might not like it, right? But it's easy. Does that make sense? I don't have to be pushing to something that might make me a little uncomfortable, might change me. If I don't change, I can just stay right here. And even if it's not the greatest thing, it's all right. All right? But I'm really confident. I do what I do right now, and I do it well. Right? So that is something that can really affect our discipline because we get this false sense of confidence that where we're at and what we're doing is exactly what we need. All right? And then, I'm not a huge fan of quotes, but that which is easy is far less likely to change us. Okay? So that sums up kind of how we view discipline and why we might struggle with it. So, from here we jump into our 3 Ps.
Priority.
Yeah, that's so true. Past tense, what is that? Alright, so I came up with 3 Ps. The reason I did that, rules of 3, makes people remember things a little bit easier. And then I used alliteration because that makes people remember easier. So I got your 3 Ps. That'll sum things up nicely for you. Okay? The first step into gaining discipline, alright? Finding motivation and sticking to a change that you want to take place in your life, alright, is to first prioritize. Alright? So, I want to lose 15 pounds. Okay? What's going to have to happen? Something you're doing has got to change. Because what you do currently has got you up 15 pounds from where you want to be. And this is just a really simple, shallow example, okay? Just to lose 15 pounds, this is just an example, right? You're going to have to shift something. You're going to have to change your environment, your structure to lose that 15 pounds, right? You can't just simply keep doing exactly what you're doing and lose 15 pounds. It's not how it works. You're not going to do the exact thing you do. You're not going to wake up at 6, blah, blah, blah at 7, work from 8 to 6, blah, blah, blah at 7, watch TV, go to sleep. Something in there's got to shift around, okay, for that to take place. So you narrow your scope. And you can do this with as many, this doesn't have to even pertain to one specific thing like working out. Narrow your scope to 3 or 4 things that you really want to prioritize. Alright? And I mean in your life in general, not even just like your health and wellness. Alright? Priority number 1, be a good husband and a dad. Priority number 2, I'm going to eat really well, so I need to do X each day. Priority number 3, do something that relates to my business life or coaching life, something like that. And then priority number 4 is kind of that like last one that is a priority, but it's definitely not in that top 3, okay? But it's going to be something that 4th, that 5th, those kind of things are usually things right on the edge that you're going to struggle with, but you're going to have to really find the time for those ones, okay? Usually that first priority you have and that second priority, which is usually something that has to do with your partner, family, something along those lines. And that second one, people usually find that it's work. If you're someone who works a normal, like 8 to 5, something like that, or a full-time job. So that 3, 4, and 5 are the things that you really have to start examining. Okay, am I putting my time in the correct pieces here? In the correct times here? Right? And so you have to kind of take a look at, okay, what do I need? What do I want to accomplish? All right? How am I going to shift my environment to accomplish those things? All right? And then from there, you have to have an honest conversation with yourself. And you'll hear me talk about this a couple times throughout this talk, but an honest conversation with yourself is going to be one of the hardest things you ever do, because you don't know necessarily all the times that you're lying to you. So being honest with yourself is going to be a very difficult thing that you're going to have to practice. All right? Because nobody can fool you quite like you can. All right? Nobody can fool you quite like, I think I'm going to just watch this TV because it's been a long day. All right? And I know I really wanted to do that meal prep over there, but this TV is pretty good. And, I can meal prep tomorrow. If I prioritize it tomorrow, I can do that then. I'll just keep doing this, and I'll look on my phone, and I'll do that. And, oh, it's an hour past the time I wanted to go to bed. Shit. All right, okay, so I'll just, tomorrow I got it. Tomorrow I'll prioritize it tomorrow. Yeah, I got it. You're going to have to be honest with those conversations of life. This has got to shift. This is a change we have to make. I need to be honest with myself about that, right? So what breathes life into your actions? What breathes life into what you want to accomplish? What breathes life into your priorities? And what bleeds it? Okay? When you set things down that you want to prioritize, all right? And you take a look at that list, however big or small you want to start with. I wouldn't go too big. Narrow your scope. All right? You're going to have things you do throughout the day that are either pushing you towards your priorities and getting them done. You're going to have things that are neutral. They're not really doing anything, but you might view as like necessities that you just have to do as a basic human being on a daily life. Or you have things that are taking you away from those priorities. Right? So you're going to have to examine, okay, I'm obviously going to need more time invested in the pushing towards my priorities, less time in the pushing away. Right? So that might be 1 hour less of, I know I'm using this example a lot, 1 hour less of the TV shows you like to watch and 1 hour more of pushing towards your priorities. I'm not saying never watch your favorite TV show again. I'm saying maybe cut back from the 2.5 hours down to the 1, or cut back from the hour on Instagram to 30 minutes. All right? Things you got to be honest with yourself and tracking and looking at. All right? So what is pushing you towards your priority? What is taking you further away each time you do it?
I got a question. What happens when you prioritize? Like me, I put a lot of priority in my work. I take pride in my work.
Yeah.
But, and I've talked to you, the stress level with that.
Yes.
And I feel like it really bleeds from me.
Yeah.
More so than what it should. So how do I prioritize that?
So, what I would say first is, when you have something like work, right? And it's kind of almost something that you have to do because it is the thing that's going to allow you to do the other things in life that you want to do, right? Obviously, it's hard to have a house if you don't work, right? So some things like that. What I would think about strongly is, okay, if I can't currently have a shift in my work, right? Let's say that's not on the immediate horizon. Maybe it's on the farther horizon, and you can kind of see it and begin to make things happen in that situation. But what are other things that Chandra can prioritize within her life, right? That do breathe life into you. Okay? So, with work being as tough as it is and as hard as it is, what are the things that you could do that bring you joy outside of work, right? And really capitalize on the time that you are able to get away from work and really dive into those things. Whether it be a hobby, whether it be simply, getting together with a friend here or there, something that brings you joy, that takes you away from that scope of something that bleeds from you, right? Because inevitably you will have situations in life where you're gonna get into this point of, I'm doing something, one of the points of my life is really stressful and a real big struggle. So I need to counterbalance that with things that I can prioritize that are bringing me joy and happiness, right? And start to shift what time you do have towards that. There's always, you can't create more hours in a day, right? You get 24. Hopefully you're sleeping at least 6 of them. But, so taking those hours where you might not be working, and don't think of it on a daily scale, think of it on a weekly scale. Can I put 2 or 3 hours of this week into something that brings me joy? All right, if there's 24 times 7, whatever that number is, that's hours in a week. Can I take just 3 or 4 of those and put it into something that is going to be a positive impact, right? And that helps you create a little more sustainability on the things that are taken away, right? Because I could tell you, for instance, I love my job, and I'll never do another job. Right? I'll always find out a way to coach. But there are times where coaching will take away from me, even though usually it's breathing into me. Like, I enjoy it and I get positive interaction out of it. Sometimes it does bleed away from me when I'm doing it over and over and over, and I gotta take a step back. So I find those other things that bring me joy, and that kind of actually re-energizes me for the coaching. Right? So that's a good question. And that's something also we could dive into more one-on-one. Yes?
I know with my work, I used to try to get all my stuff done, and I was always the person that wanted to get work done, and I would push through my lunch break just to get stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a lot for me to be like, you know what, this stuff can wait for an hour for me to put myself first and go to the gym, get my workout in, and then do my work.
Yeah.
I feel like work will replace you in a heartbeat. So I feel like, people at home can't replace you. So taking care of yourself is something you really should do. So, that's just how I looked at it, was taking care of yourself is better than, I'm not saying slack off at work, but I'm just saying, ease off of it a little bit and give yourself at least a little bit of time to take that break.
Yeah.
Because I know taking that break in the middle of the day just gives me, a little break in my head. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. One of the most, I only got one coach in here, so I can say it's not. The most important thing that I could have in a coach is someone who's reliable and consistent. Give me a 7 or an 8 out of 10 over someone who's a 10 one day and a 2 the next, right? And people who can take that time to self-prioritize, because I would argue that you're probably going to do your job better if you take the time for yourself. So let's say you're not pushing through your lunch break and you're doing 40 minutes less of work. Well, if you're pushing through constantly and you're running to a wall, you're getting frustrated, you're getting unhappy, you're going to be doing the work of a 3, a 2. Whereas if you took care of yourself, you're going to be consistently doing the work of a 7 or an 8, right? So always be that 7 or 8, be consistent and reliable, and that's only going to happen if you're taking care of yourself. So don't be afraid to take care of yourself, because that's going to re-energize you, like I was saying, when you get back to what you need to be doing. Right? So don't be afraid to take a step back. I always tell my wife it's going to be there, right? When you come back to it, right? So don't stress about it. It's going to be there. Right?
There's
always work. Exactly. So very good. Very good. All right. So these get harder as you go. Prioritize isn't actually the hardest part. Prioritize is actually the easiest. Is why I put it first. first. You know, you get an idea, you're like, all right, I'm gonna prioritize this, and I got a rough idea how I'm gonna do it. Persistence is commitment. And we all fear commitment, right, ladies? Alright, commitment is scary. Alright, use tools to assist you when available. Alright, a coach, someone you can sit down and chat with. Alright, partner, friend, whatever. Someone who can hold you accountable, that's going to go through something maybe similar or has done what you're trying to accomplish. Alright, and is willing to hold you accountable through it. Alright, or some self-accountability, which would be to journal. So you write down what you're feeling, and then you use your own self because you look back on Monday and you're like, I didn't know I was feeling like that on Monday. Alright? Because you forgot. It was a week ago, it was 2 weeks ago. Alright? That is one that I see happen to people all the time. They'll come in and have a bad week of workouts. You're like, man, I'm a failure at this. Like, I'm not good. I'm not getting any better. I can't do yada yada X, Y, Z. And they like forgot that they PR'd something 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, 2 weeks ago you had one of the best weeks of training of your life. And they forgot it, right? And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute about why we really focus on the bad and we don't really remember the good, right? So journaling can help you kind of remember and think about, okay, I can take a step back, I take a deep breath, like this is just a blip on the radar. I know this day seems like complete ass, but it was just a day. Like, put it past me, I can move on to the next one. Alright? So those three things are really good in helping you persist, commit to what you're doing because you're saying it out loud, which is something we talked about was a fear earlier. You say it out loud, get someone you can trust who's going to hold you accountable, but talk you through it when it sucks. Right? Or start journaling yourself and use yourself. Or do both. Nothing wrong with that. Right? Label priorities and be honest with them and be fluid in how you approach these priorities. So when I say be fluid in how you approach your priorities, you're going to have kind of like your staple priorities. You're going to have to learn to be fluid in how you approach some. Okay? If your priority is make it to the gym 3 times a week, you don't need to stress if you don't make it on the 4th day. Because I've seen that happen. People are like, I didn't make it to the gym that 4th day. If you made it 3 times, you're good. Like that was your priority, right? That 4th was just cherry on top. Be fluid in how you approach it. Okay? Maybe it helps to be a little more specific in what you're thinking your priorities were. Alright? Go as far as to say like, okay, I want to do X, Y, Z, not just, I want to be healthier. Like, that's not really a priority. That's just kind of something you want to happen. Alright? So be a little more fluid in how you approach it and be willing to adjust things. What's up, Matt?
Good morning.
Good habits are a snowball effect. You do one good thing, it makes the next good thing you want to do a lot easier. Alright? It's easier to eat healthier if you work out consistently. Alright? Because when you don't work out, you get into that mindset of might as well. Right? So you can give up on X, Y, Z because you're already given up on this, you're already giving up on that. Good habits have a snowball effect. Right? Start with small ones that build into bigger ones. What's a habit everyone, I hope, does once a day?
Showers.
Showers. What else? Sleep. Brush your teeth. Right? You don't think about those, but those are good habits. So you're already doing pretty good. Add one more to it. You know what I mean? Wake up immediately, drink 12 ounces of water so you can kickstart your hydration. Don't wait. Like literally, you get up out of bed, that's the first thing you're going to do. Now your hydration's not waiting. Okay? That's a small one. Takes you 15 seconds. Alright? So good habits will snowball effect. Alright? You're already doing a handful. Think about those small things you already do. Add to it piece by piece. Pretty soon your whole day is just good habits. And you're like, I don't even know what failure is. Just kidding. You always know failure. hopefully you always know what failure is, because you should always be trying to fail. Alright? Don't make what you want or need to happen an avatar. Okay? James Cameron. What you want, need doesn't have a face. Maybe it does. Maybe his name's John. I don't know. Robert, Thomas, Linda, whatever. I don't care what you're into.
Can't remember all the years.
Alright? What you want, need doesn't know who you are. Okay? So stop creating this thing of like a fear of rejection from being healthy. Alright? And I've seen people do that. They'll picture what they want to be, or maybe it's your own self that you want to be. And you're like, that doesn't like what I am, so therefore I can't go get that, be that. Alright? Don't create this unobtainable thing in your head. That kind of cycles back to discipline. Right? Don't view it as unobtainable when you haven't prioritized and begin to persist towards it. Right? View it as obtainable, right? And think about the ways you can go about being persistent in getting it. Alright? To sum up persistence with a quote. Another quote, noted on this one. This is actually a real one. A river cuts through rock, not because it's power, but because it's persistence.
Oh.
Good grammar. Right?
Erosion, they call me the rock.
Yeah.
Stop weathering your wind.
Yeah. Very good. All right. So, perception. It's 13. You got it. I think is probably the hardest one. Okay, because I think it's the most. I think it's the most mental. Whereas prioritize is idea, right? Persistence is action. Perception is how you mentally go about thinking about handling it, right? So perception is how do you consistently self-reflect and shift your mindset to a positive one, not a negative one. So how do you examine failure? Would anyone like to talk about, or just give a brief summary of how they examine failure, how it makes them feel? It's okay if you don't. I'll talk about myself if you don't want to.
It honestly depends on what kind of failure it was. Either, I think I've been in situations where it's made me fight harder because you feel like you got closer to doing something, but you just didn't quite hit that mark.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could be talking about something as simple as a PR in a year, or your first attempt at some kind of hobby or sport, or going somewhere to do something, and it just regressed. Here's what you thought you were gonna do, but you were closer than what you imagined. Then sometimes you're probably like, oh, yeah, not for me.
Yeah.
So,
Like you just want to be like, nah, I'm just not going to do that
yeah,
because I felt that. Right.
you did, yeah. And again, I mean, that's perspective, your perception on stuff, so once you've kind of got an experience or something, you're like, you've got an idea before you do it, or try it, or attempt it, or set it up for yourself, but once you go through the experience of it, you learn a lot more, I think, about yourself. And is this really for me?
Yeah.
And then that,
Brandon?
if that's something you're still wanting to fight for, or if it's something you decide, yeah, not my thing.
I suck at snatches, so I try to avoid them.
Okay. Very
So,
specific. I like
yeah.
Programming.
But now that I'm gonna, do some competitions, I kind of have to face that.
it. Dang. So you're given a priority, which
Yeah.
is a competition now.
Yeah.
Spoke it.
Yeah. Spoken into
Yep.
existence.
So-
How does it know?
I guess now I have to look at it as I'm probably going to fail, because I'm just not used to that movement.
Uh-huh.
But I'm gonna have to practice and get better at it.
right?
And so it's just gonna help me get better, I guess.
So in essence, failure will become learning, because I mean, obviously, if you snatch 20 times between now and then, you might not be what you perceive as good at it, but you will be better than you would be standing here right now.
Yeah.
Right? And that's an important thing to understand, that steady growth is where priorities and persistence meet this perception of improvement. So those first two tie into this third one really well. Right? Another thing in perception is evaluate your daily choices. What are you doing well each day? What are you doing not so well each day? Right? And this is where I kind of like to think about, we fail to perceive the common good because it is second nature. We don't really think about, nobody in here thinks about brushing their teeth anymore as like, knock that out the park. Right? We don't take a shower like, crush today. You know? You don't do that. Like, you're like, yeah, I was supposed to do that. That good habit became second nature to you, right? It's no longer something that fulfills, it's something that you expect of yourself. You want to learn how to create the priorities you seek and turn them into habits that you expect of yourself. Right? You're starting off, your working out will be like, man, I made it to the gym. I'm proud of myself. You eventually want that to turn that into, I made it to the gym. That's what I do.
I like that facial expression.
I make it to the gym. Okay? You want to shift that thought process slowly. And it doesn't have to be like that at first. Okay? Be proud of yourself when you're setting new things and you go and you start doing it and you accomplish them. Right? But keep going until that is literally second nature and that's just what you do. I cooked 10 of the meals I ate this week at home. Alright? First few times you do it, you're like, man, really nailed this. Keep doing it, and eventually you're like, your friends are like, man, this cooks 10 times, like, brings all their food in, yada, 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 etc. That's impressive. Or maybe they're like, why do you do that? It's dumb, I'm jealous. Alright? But eventually, it's just what you do. You're like, I don't know the other way, because that's the habit I've formed, is what I do. I can't foresee myself getting Bojangles for the 6th time this week. Not talking about you.
What did you say? What did you say?
Remind yourself of the good. And when you're having the bad day, I know it sounds dumb, but remind yourself of the good habits that you do daily. Alright? Because you remind yourself that, yeah, there is an element of taking care of myself that I did do today. I took a shower, I brushed my teeth, I did the simple things I was supposed to do. Right? We hyper-focus on the bad things, the things that we feel like we're failing at, because it brings a negative emotion. Whereas things we always do that we should perceive as good are just second nature, and it kind of just leaves us feeling neutral. Right? Kind of like I was saying, you brush your teeth, you don't feel great or bad about it. You're just like, what am I supposed to do? But if you go over 1,000 calories on what you're supposed to eat, then you feel bad because you're like, that shouldn't have happened. Right? That it's kind of common, but I feel like crap once I keep doing it. So you hyper-focus on the bad because it causes that negative emotion. So learning how to handle negative emotion, alright, is very important. It's important to realize, if you go back to the snowball effect, bad habits can snowball effect just as much as good habits. What you want to do is stop that bad habit in its tracks, or a bad day in its tracks. One bad day does not mean you have to have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 bad days in a row. One bad day means you need to take a deep breath, reevaluate your priorities, Reevaluate how you're gonna persist into those good priorities, and the next day crush it. Not have a bad day, be like, I'm just gonna give up on everything tomorrow too, and then it's gonna be Friday, so Saturday I'm just gonna do whatever, and then Sunday, I go over to my parents' house and we'll just do that too, so I'll get back on the good priority bandwagon on Monday. No, you have a bad day Thursday, you make Friday a good day, you make Saturday a good day in which you hit your priorities, you make Sunday a good day, and then you get back to Monday and you're like, I'm actually ready to add something to it. So one step back doesn't stop you. It's the 5 steps back and just trying to take one, and you're constantly going backwards because you're only getting 1 step forward with your 5 steps back. Don't let bad days snowball effect. Right? A big one, self-reflection requires honesty. I know I've mentioned that already today before. Like being able to be honest with yourself is going to be probably the biggest struggle. I think it's one of my biggest struggles. I'm not going to paint that picture for you guys as if that's your biggest struggle. Self-honesty is probably the biggest struggle I have in my life. Like being able to honestly sit down and be like, you shouldn't have done this, or you should have done that, or you needed to do this but you didn't do it, or X, Y, Z. Right? You procrastinated on this. Right? And the reason it affects me so much, and I expect higher of myself with self-honesty, is because I expect myself to be honest with others. And I find that if you have consistent times of difficulty with self-reflection of yourself and honesty of yourself, you're going to have a tough time being honest with others. Because everything inside of you and how you perceive yourself and how you communicate with yourself is going to bleed in how you communicate and perceive others. If you constantly have this bad perception of something about you, the odds are when you see someone else doing something, maybe it's something you want to do, the odds are you're going to see that and you're going to think negatively of it. And then you're going to start creating these scenarios of why that's not you. So it's going to just create this whole, I can't do that because X, Y, Z, and then you get into this negative snowball effect. Alright? So really making sure that you're able to have these honest conversations with yourself and start them small. And then once you're honest with yourself, being able to communicate it to somebody else so that you're putting it out there. So now it's not just a thought, or write it down. So now it's not just a thought in your head, it's actually something that's out there. It almost becomes more real that way. We also fail when we compare, and this kind of goes with what I was just saying, we fail when we compare constantly, and we do not account for environment. We see someone else is doing something maybe that we want to be doing, but we're not taking into account the environment that they have set up. We just expect it to happen to us even though we're not willing to change the environment. Or change our priorities. Or, even better, we're not willing to be honest that our life simply will not allow for that high of a priority for that thing that we might want to do. I want to work out 3 hours a day. Alright, cool. What's your job life like? I work 8 to 10 hours. And then I'm going to eat the other 1 or 2. And then I'm going to watch some TV the other 2. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Then I'm going to sleep 6 hours. Sweet. See you in a week when you hate yourself and you don't ever want to work out again. Right? You have to be honest with yourself. Okay, what can I honestly handle? Okay? So don't get caught up in comparing how you're going to be doing to someone else whose environment might be completely different than yours. Focus on your own environment, the things you can control. Okay? Control the things that you can control. Right? Focus on what you have the power over. Empower yourself when you do that. That is what you do. You empower yourself. You realize that it's your fault. Right? And that's one of the most important things for a human being to be able to understand. Ultimately, it's your fault. If someone gets mad at me for something, or let's say it's not even something I did. Let's say I'm coaching and someone doesn't get the movement and XYZ, yada yada, and they're like, I hate that gym. The coach wasn't good. He couldn't help me get the movement. Right? Yeah, it could be that that person didn't try, but ultimately it's my fault. Right? Let's say someone, if my alarm clock doesn't go off and I don't get to where I need to go on time, it's my fault. If a meeting I have one-on-one with someone and I don't help them how they need to be helped, it's on me. Learning to take an objective look at how you could have been different in a situation really helps with yourself, because then you're able to self-reflect a little bit better. Okay, you're willing to say, that's my fault. It's not the end of the world, though, that's my fault. Okay? It doesn't mean the world comes crashing down and I'm a complete failure. It just means I'm able to have an honest conversation with myself and I can change something and I can do a little better next time. And that bleeds over into a lot of things in your life, right? Because everything is your fault, and I mean the good things too. When you crush it and you do really well, that's your fault. It's not because someone else held your hand, okay? You might have used someone else to help you get to that point, right? You might have had a coach really help you with something, or a friend really encourage you, or yada, whatever it might be. But ultimately, you had to do it. It's your fault that you did well, right? So, not comparing yourself to the environment and having the understanding that perception is a reflection of what you prioritize and what you persist. Okay? So, being able to perceive how you are, how you react to things, how you handle it going forward is a reflection of what you prioritize and persist. Alright? And real quickly, last thing we'll cover is just to kind of sum it all up. What are the steps to balance and discipline? Number one is to narrow your scope. Okay? If you walked into an entire house that needed remodeling, it'd feel like a lot. But if I showed you a room if I showed you a closet that needed cleaning, you wouldn't be so overwhelmed. Right? If I gave you a day and you're like, remodel this house in a day, you'd be like, you'd probably just give up. Like you start and you're like, there's no way. But if I was like, hey, let's rearrange this closet. Oh, okay. I'll probably do that in a couple hours. Right? Narrow your scope down to something and really focus on, okay, what are the things that I really value and prioritize, and what can I start doing to make that happen? What are shifts in my environment that I can do to make that happen? Right? And it's important to know, it's one of my least favorite quotes, routine is the enemy. It's one of the dumbest quotes I've ever heard in my life. Okay? You will not get anywhere in anything if you don't have some semblance of a routine for accomplishing that task at that time. That doesn't mean the routine you have has got to be the routine you have for the rest of your life. That just means you need to change your routine to a new set routine for a time period. But to keep it simple, if you want to learn how to snatch better, you're not going to get better being like, I'm going to snatch today and I'm going to mix it up and go on that 5-mile run tomorrow. It's not going to make you snatch better. You need to snatch. Okay? You need to snatch, 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 snatch. You need to do different variations, different intensities, things like that to get better. Alright? April, see if you can clip me saying snatch, snatch, snatch over and over.
That's a mean cover. I see it. Snatch, 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 snatch.
Observe what adds value or doesn't add value to your priorities. So what adds value to you, what doesn't add value to you. Alright? And it doesn't mean you're never allowed to do the things that aren't necessarily adding value. A little downtime, you're just chilling out, you're doing nothing by yourself, whatever you do in your own time. Alright? That doesn't mean it's not adding value. Or that doesn't mean it's not useful. It just means at that time, You need to recharge your batteries so that you can add some value later. Right? But your day should be filled with things that are adding value. So if it is a health and fitness thing, making your own food is something that adds value to you. Going for a walk, even if you can't do anything else that day, is adding value to you. Small things. Do as many things as you can that adds value to the priority that you're trying to achieve to help assist build that discipline and motivation. Shift environment must take place before an organism can evolve. Okay? So, I'm a Christian, but I also understand that biologically evolution takes place to some degree, right? You lift weights, you get stronger. That's called evolution. That's basically evolution. Something has to take place though for your muscles to get bigger or for you to get stronger, right? You have to lift the weights. That's a shift in environment. You're taking your muscles from an environment where they're like just chilling out, hanging out, not doing anything, and all of a sudden you start lifting weights, your muscles are like, what the hell is going on in here? Right? I almost died. I better get a little stronger so I can handle that next time. That's a shift in environment. You're giving your muscles a new environment. That's just like a small way to think about it. Alright? But if you want to change something about your lifestyle, you're going to have to change something in your environment that might be a little uncomfortable. Alright? But you need to persist through it and kind of get used to it. So give yourself time, but that's got to take place. The hardest part is to persist in a new lifestyle, and change requires stability. Don't make too big of a change from where you're at, because the bigger the change, the more unstable. You know what happens when you take something and you completely change its environment? Well, if you were to do that in a biology lab, you'd kill it. Alright? Make slow, small changes. Okay? Just to give you an example, if you're someone who drinks a lot of soda, I have soda 3 times a day. Alright, this next 2 weeks, let's shoot for 2 a day. Or even 2 a day during the weekdays, and you can have 3 on the weekends. 2 weeks later, you come back. I did it. That wasn't too bad. Okay, alright. Now let's shift to 2 every day. Just 2. Come back. It's a month and a half later. Seems like a long time away, but it's really not. Alright, let's do 1 on the weekdays, 2 on the weekends. I'd probably do that. Come back. I had 1 day I slept up, but the other days I nailed it. Sweet. Let's do 1 every day. 3 months later. Let's try 4. 1 every other day. 4 months later. Okay, let's take it to, you can have 1 on the weekend when you're out with your friends. That person's much healthier in 7 months. Small change, but huge change in their environment if you really think about it. Right? Let's say that person's 25 years old. Sweet. You probably just added 5 years to their life. Now they have another 70 years to go do really cool stuff. Right? And it only took them 7 months to change it. Very cool stuff. Persist slowly. Make small changes to your environment. Alright? And lastly, cycle back through your steps. Remember, there is no failure in learning, only growth. So even on the days when you fail, take a deep breath, evaluate what your priority was, get back on it the next day. And then every couple months, like that example I just gave you, reevaluate and kind of maybe push it a little bit further. Right? I've been able to do this. This feels pretty good. Let's add 1 more step to it. Camera stop, but I stopped too, just on time.
No.